Our next speaker, Deepak, uh, is a quality-driven software tester and mentor with over a decade of experience across web, API, and desktop applications. He is passionate about context-driven testing and helping teams uncover risk, improve decision making, and build quality into systems from the start. So, in this session, testing beyond checks, Deepak will challenge the notion that more automation and checks automatically lead to better quality. And he will share some of his practical insights on moving beyond mechanical testing to risk based thinking and building quality that lasts. So, with that, please join me in welcoming Deepak. Over to you, Deepak.
Yeah, thank you. So, my name is Deepak Karn, and as you already you introduced me very well. So, I have a decade of testing experience in enterprise software, particularly in cybersecurity products. So, most recently, I was at IBM Security, and then in an Nepal-based company, Lockpoint, which was also a cybersecurity product company. So during that time, I had the opportunity to lead QA teams and work closely with engineering and product teams, and write extensively about software testing through my blog, Life of Q. So yeah, let's start with the topic today. I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. You see my screen?
No, not yet.
No.
Can I do it? I have to quit the this Zoom and reopen this. Just wait for me.
Okay, give me a second.
Or you can share the screen silent.
Huh. Okay, give me a second and I should be able to share.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the title of today's talk is testing beyond checks, and why passing checks is not the same as understanding the risk. Now, before anyone gets worried, this is not a talk against automation. It's not a talk against pipelines. It's not a even talk against checking. I use automation. I appreciate fast feedbacks. Checking is valuable. The question I want us to explore today is slightly different. So, what happens when checking becomes our definition of testing? Because I believe many engineering teams today are surrounded by evidence, but not necessarily understand. And that's what I would like us to think about together today. So, let's start with a simple question. And I would like each of you to answer this question for yourself. Can you move to the next slide, Saga? Yeah. So I would like you to answer this question in your own mind. How do you know your product is good enough? Not your company answer, not your team answer, your answer. Imagine you are sitting in a release meeting tomorrow morning and someone asked you, right? So how do you know we are ready to release? what evidence would you use, or what would convince you? Take just a moment and think about that. Because answer to this question shapes almost every quality decision we make. And interestingly, most teams answer in a very similar way. So look at the answer we usually hear. Okay, can you go to the next one? Okay, so if you see, right, most usually the conversation, right, sounds something like this. Our coverage is over 90%. Our automated checks are passing. The pipeline is green. We don't have any critical defects. The release has been approved. Right now, there's nothing wrong with any of this. In fact, I like every one of them. I want automated checks. I want reliable pipeline. Right. I want the visibility. Right. These are useful signals. But here is the question: are they actually answering the questions we started with? Do they really tell us the product is good enough? Do they simply tell us that certain activities were completed successfully? Those are two different things, and that difference is all the all about in the today's talk. Okay, so can you move to the next slide? Okay, so this is the central idea I would like you to remember. Evidence of activity is not evidence of understanding. Think about that for a moment. Okay, so a team can execute thousands of automated checks. A team can have impressive coverage. A team can have pass every quality gates in their pipeline, and they still misunderstand a critical risk. Why? Because activity tells us what happened, and understanding tells us what we have learned, and those aren't the same thing. One measures the execution, and the other measures the insight. And software failure often, because happens in the second one, where understanding get misused, or they just don't understand the product, and where the product fails mostly, right? So if that is the true, then then what are teams actually looking for? Let's move to the next one. So when I work with engineering teams, I have noticed something interesting. Nobody, literally, I was not. I think nobody wakes up in the morning thinking that I hope I got more test cases today. Nobody says that I hope my coverage goes from 91 to 92% today. Those things aren't the goal. They are tools, right? What team actually want is confidence. It's confidence to release. It's confidence to make changes. It's confidence to move faster. Confidence to make decisions. And that's perfectly reasonable. The problem is confidence can come from two very different places. It can come from genuine understanding, or it can come from signals that make us feel safe without actually reducing the uncertainty. And that's where the iceberg on the slide becomes very important. So if you see on the iceberg, above the surface, we see confidence, right? Coverage, pipelines, metrics, dashboard. But below the surface, there is something much harder to see. That is the hidden assumption, unknown risks, things nobody has questioned it, and that often where the biggest problem are waiting. So the real challenge isn't building confidence; it's making sure our confidence is deserved. Because confidence built on incomplete understanding can be surprisingly fragile. And that's exactly where I would like to go next. So can you just go to the next slide, please? So let's imagine, uh, the dashboard belongs to your team, and the coverage is over 90%, right? More than 200 automated checks have passed, no critical defects are open, the deployment pipeline is green, right? And if you saw this 10 minutes before release, how many of you would feel confident? Honestly, I would too, right? I would feel confident because this dashboard gives us the feeling that everything important has already been verified. But here is the question. What questions did this dashboard never ask? It didn't ask whether our assumptions are correct. It didn't ask whether our understanding was complete. It didn't ask whether reality would behave the way we expected. Dashboard answer the questions we designed them to answer. They don't ask new questions for us. And that's exactly where testing becomes the valuable. Let's look some examples, okay? Can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so the night captor. The first, this one is more than a decade ago issue, but it's still one of my favorite and clearest example of false confidence. So Night Capital wasn't a small startup. It was one of the largest market makers in the United States. But in 2012, I guess, they deployed a software into the production and everything looked normal. They deployed, completed, the deployment was completed successfully, and their operational procedure were also followed. All the checks, all the checklists, everything was done. Automated checks didn't raise any alarms. They are also green. From the team perspective, the deployment appeared very much successful. But one assumption turned out to be wrong, and that is some server were still running the legacy code, and that hadn't been updated, and that deployment process had left a part of the production environment in an unstructured state. And when the market opened, those servers begin placing the unintended stop orders, and within 45 minutes, the company lost approximately 440 million US dollars. The company never, I think, truly recovered that money so far. And so the interesting part here, what I find is this is not about the developers forgetting to write unit tests. This is not about tester forgetting to execute regression test. The deeper issue was the critical assumption about the deployment environment remained invisible. The checks answered the questions the team already knew to ask, right? But nobody asked the questions that ultimately matter. And that distinction is exactly what we have been talking about. Okay. So I think if you think this is a very much old story, let's play something new. Can you go to the next one? I think most of us remember this. Can you go to the next one, please, Sagar? So yeah, I think most of us remember this incident, right? This is CrowdStrike outage. I think many of us experienced it, right? Flight were delayed, lots of issues, bank, hospitals. I think every sector has faced this the outage because of these issues. So, and this wasn't a very small news, right? It was a very international news, and I think it's become one of the largest IT disruption, I think, in a very recent history. So after the night captain. So now I'm not here to analyze the CrowdStrike engineering process in details, right? I think many of us know the story, but instead, what I want to focus is something different. So if you see in the CrowdStrike issues, everything was existed, right? Validation, review, deployment, checks. People are also smart. They are not careless. They are not ignoring the quality. Everything was right there. But the release still produced the consequences at the global scale. So for me, the lesson isn't that testing failed. The lesson is that passing checks doesn't automatically mean we have understood every important risk. So the software system today are incredibly complex these days. Distributed services, operating system, third-party dependency, infrastructure, updates, so many things, hardware, human decisions, a lot of things, right? So we cannot assume that a successful validation process has eliminated their uncertainty. It has reduced some uncertainty, not all of it, and that is an important distinction. So now let's I think let's compare the both stories that we see. So can you move to the next slide, please? So if you see the common pattern, the Knight Capital, the CrowdStrike, it's a different companies, different industry as well, different technology as well, because it's a decade differences, right? But the pattern is still same. The checks work, the engines are failing. And that gap between what we verified and what we actually understood is where many of our biggest risks hide. And I think this is why testing still matters. Not because we need more execution, but because we need more investigation. And checking verifies, expectation. Testing helps us to discover expectation that may be incomplete. And that's a very different kind of work. So, which raises, I think, another question, right? So, let's move to the next slide. I try to answer that too. So, I don't believe this incident happened because the engineers suddenly stopped caring. I don't think so. These teams were experienced, and teams all in the Knight Capital as well in the CrowdStrike level, their engineering process was so good, right? They had the automation, they had the reviews, they had all the process out there. But I think there are three forces that quietly influencing many engineering organizations. So if you can go to the next one, I'll explain one of the features thing. Yeah. So if you see this automation bias, right? So I wanted to ask, like, and I would like you to answer it honestly as well, right? So have you ever looked at a dashboard and everything was green, everything, all the automated checks had passed, and something didn't feel right? Maybe I think you couldn't explain it. Maybe it was just your intuition, but something told you, right? I think we should look a little deeper now. Okay, so like you just get confused. You are just not 100% sure that everything is nice, but you still feel, oh no, I think there is something wrong. Have you ever experienced these things? How many, or maybe how many of you have ignored the feeling, that feeling as well, because you see the dashboard is almost 100%. Everything is great. I certainly have. I certainly have these things happen in my life, in my career, and that exactly where automation bias is. Okay, so automation bias isn't trusting the automation. Automation is incredibly valuable. Automation bias is trusting automation more than our own judgment. The machine says everything is great, right? And so we stop asking questions. Not because we are lazy, not because we are careless, because human beings naturally trust consistent system. And that's a very normal psychological response. But software doesn't fail because dashboard are green. Software fail because reality doesn't always behave the way our dashboard expects. And automation should support our thinking. It should never replace it. Right? So if you see the green, you see on the green on the dashboard, the green is actually information. It's not about the certainty. Okay. So automation is not only the thing. Let's move to the next one. Sometimes numbers themselves become the problem. So I don't know how many of you heard about this good Hart's law. So if you know, that's nice. But let's summarize this from my side. So there is an idea from economics called this Goodhart's law. It says that when a measure becomes a target, it stops being a good measure. So think about the coverage. Okay, so coverage begins as an information, and that's very useful. But then maybe someone, maybe your manager, your lead will say, our goal is 95%. Okay. And now that coverage isn't information anymore. It's become a target. And something interesting happens. And that is people start writing test cases to improve the number. Not necessarily to improve their understanding, but to improve the number. Now they start chasing the goal, and then the dashboard looks better. But the question is, has the product become safer? Maybe, maybe not, right? Everything's exactly same thing happens with defect counts as well. So when if you remember in the company, people chasing the okay, how many bugs you found today or within the week, that becomes a target. Like who can find more bugs, right? Maybe the automation percentage, maybe the velocity, execution, who executed most of the test cases. So whenever a metric become a goal, our behavior changes, and we start optimizing the score instead of understanding the system. Because software doesn't care about the KPIs. Reality doesn't negotiate with the dashboard. Okay. So I also feel that metrics are useful, but metric worship is not. Okay. So let's move to the next one. That is even more dangerous than this psychological effect. Okay. So this is McNamara fallacy. So McNamara, this one is one of my favorite ideas, because I think it quietly affects many of engineering organizations. It work like this. So when we measure what is easy, then we assume what is easy to measure must be matter most. Okay, so let me remind. It says that we measure what is easy, then we assume what is easy to measure must be what matter most. So let's say like coverage, easy, test count, that is easy to measure, defect strengths, that is also easy to measure, and certainly we feel that this is the most important. But the other side is the hidden assumption, the customer frustration, the business risk, the operational fragility, right? Those are the things very much harder to measure. So what happens? We spend our attention on the numbers, and gradually the things that are difficult to measure receive less discussion. Not because they don't matter, but because they are uncomfortable. They are very hard. They are uncertain. They are messy. And unfortunately, those messy things are exactly where software fails. Okay, so if you could only measure one thing, what would you choose? The easiest thing. That's my question. Or things most likely to hurt your users. Anyway, so let's move to the one. We'll answer those things. So let's move to the next thing, which brings us back to the questions that we have been asking from the beginning. So if checking isn't the whole story, then what exactly testing is? For me, testing isn't primarily about execution. Testing is investigation. Testing is learning. Testing is reducing uncertainty. Testing is helping teams make better decisions. Everything else, tools, automation, framework, support that purpose, but it doesn't replace. Okay, so and whenever I begin testing something new, I personally ask these three questions. Sorry, those three questions. Can you go to the next one? So whenever I explore the product, right, I come back to these three questions. First one is, what assumptions are we making? Okay, because assumptions often become invisible, right? So the first question is that what decision I'm making. The second one is what could seriously hurt the users. Not annoy them, and not about the inconvenience. It's not about that. Actually hurt. Maybe it's a financial hurt, maybe it's operational, maybe emotional, something like that. So what could seriously hurt the user? Okay. Then the third question is what behavior would genuinely surprise us, right? Because surprises are interesting, right? Because surprises usually reveals the gap in our understanding. So if you see these three questions, right, they are on the test cases. They are the thinking tool, right? So the testing often begins with a better question, not a better checklist. Okay. So I personally start something like this. Maybe I start with discussion first, then we are start with the assumptions, sit with the developers, the product owners, all together. So these are the things that I follow. So yeah, can you go to the next one, please? So I think this is where I think checking and testing finally become easier to separate. Okay. So people often ask me, so are you saying checking is bad? This things always like being asked by my juniors as well, but it's absolutely not. Checking is essential. Without checking, uh, today's software, the modern software development wouldn't function. Checking is very important because checking verifies, right? Checking verifies what you know. Checking verifies what you are developing. So checking is very, very much important. But testing is investigate. Testing investigates. So it's like what? So testing explore the possibilities. Checking answer the questions that you already know, but testing help you discover the question itself as well. Right? It just help us that we haven't even realized that these things exist, right? So that those kind of things help testing. So testing is always uh, uh, an investigation. So the industry, maybe I think today, uh, probably needs more. What is also needs is more enough of investigation. The testing, the checking is always there, but investigation is more important because now you can automate what you know, right? You can automate the checking part, but you cannot automate the investigation part. It's a very difficult job because investigation start with different level, not only the software, maybe from the people, maybe from the conversation, right? So so because these are not aren't the competing activities, they are complementary. Both of them support each other, right? One provides evidence, that is checking. From checking, you can collect the evidence, but the other creates the understanding. And the quality product, the quality actually needs both. Okay. So I think I have one final idea to wrap these things. Let's move to the next one. So I would like to finish with one idea that has completely changed the way I think about testing. And testing, for me, testing isn't a technical activity, it's a social activity. So think about this. Who decide whether the release goes to the production? Usually not the tester, right? Who decide whether a feature is valuable? Not tester again, right? Who decide whether a risk is acceptable? Again, not alone the tester. There's so many inputs, right? So developer makes decision, product manager make decision, software architect make decision, leadership as well makes decisions. So what does testing do? So testing contributes something very much intuitively important, and that is to those decisions, and that is information. We tester, by doing a testing, we provide the information, we provide the understanding, we provide evidence, we provide the context, and that's why I believe quality doesn't come from only a QAT. quality emerges from a decision a team makes together. This means this doesn't live in your test case, basically. Risk live in your conversation, in our conversation, the conversation that you do with your developers, with your stakeholders. And if those conversations never happen, it doesn't matter how many automated checks you have, how many test cases you have, right? I think the risk lies there. So good testing improves conversation, and better conversation usually lead to a better decision. So that's it. So if that is true, can you go to the next slide? Let's have something. Yeah. So the thing is, let's think about a typical release meeting scenario. Okay. So if someone asks, did all tests pass? That's not a bad question, right? It's a very much useful question, right? But it is incomplete, in my opinion. If you just replace this question with a different one, let's say, what risk remains? Now you can notice that what happens. The conversation changes immediately. Okay. So now if you say, for example, if you say 95% checks are passed, for example, okay, and if you just stop there with the number, then that is a very much bad way of conversation about the quality. But if you ask what remains in that remaining 5%, what kind of risk we have in that 5%, that is the conversation, and we'll find better conclusion, better decision out of that conversation, right? So if you just replace the questions, did all the test pass with what risk remains, the conversation will immediately change. Instead of discussing the numbers, it will now begin discussing the assumptions, the business impact, the customer experience, the operational concern, etc., right? And that exactly where testing should encourage. Not simply closing the checklist, it should be opening a conversation, right? And I sometimes say to my team as well, a checklist tells us what we remember, but conversation helps us to discover what you forget. And that's why I think the second question is much more valuable. So if you see on these two questions, one question close the discussion, right? What did all test cases pass? But other one just start the other. It's just the beginnings of the other quality discussion, the conversation. So yeah, can you move to the next one? If I have to just wrap, because I talked a lot of issues, the story, the test, and the case study as well. But if you don't remember all the examples from today, that's perfectly fine. Then I would simply like you to remember 4 ideas. Okay. The first, checks provide evidence. Testing create understanding. The second, confidence requires investigation. It can't be fully automated, right? It's required the human interaction, the conversation that all things that we discussed so far. So confidence requires an investigation. And the third one is metrics are useful, but don't let them hide the assumptions or the business risks or the system fidelity. And finally, quality is something the testing team produces. Quality emerges from shared decision. I think those 4 ideas have changed the way I think about the software, and they have changed the kind of conversation I try to have with my teams. So yeah, can you go to the last one? I think there's one more slide, 1 or 2, I think. So I would like to leave you with final thought, and this slide is the entire presentation, I think, that's summarized in one sentence. Um, so confidence is not earned by passing checks. Confidence is earned by understanding this. And the software industry doesn't need fewer checks, right? We absolutely need safety. We need automation. We need pipelines. We need fast feedbacks, but we also need curiosity, critical thinking, um, meaningful conversation. Because checks tells us whether something behaved as expected, but testing helps us to discover whether our expectations were enough. And I think that distinction worth protecting, and especially as our system becomes more complex, and especially as AI allows us to generate more checks than ever before, right? So the challenge has never been generating checks. The challenge has always been understanding this. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Deepak.
Yeah, so connect me on LinkedIn by scanning this
Yes,
one.
we
If you can,
we see LinkedIn's profile ID on the chat. If someone wants
yeah.
to connect with Deepak,
And there's one more slide. If you can subscribe to a blog as well, I write about software testing. Um, Keep in mind that there's nothing like tutorials or any um, anything like tutorial or tools about tools. It's about only about critical thinking, the assumptions that we make. It's a different kind of things that I write, not the usual ones. You can check. If you like it, you can subscribe it.
okay. Thank you, Deepak. I think we have. If you have any questions, please feel to ask Deepak directly. Otherwise, you can scan the QR code as well to follow Deepak on the LinkedIn. And I believe there are a couple of questions here on the chat. Sagar, shall I go ahead and take the questions what we have?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So one of the question would be if a team wanted to move beyond a checklist-driven testing culture, what are the first 2 or 3 practical changes you would recommend?
So uh, that's a very good question, I think. So changing culture doesn't start with the new tools. Okay, it's a start with the conversation. Okay, if I had to recommend just 3 things, then that would be first, change the release conversation that we discussed, right? As I said that instead of asking the did all this pass, we're gonna start asking what risks remain, right? And that one question, I think that one question shift the focus completely, from completed activities to remaining uncertainty, and it encourage developers, other stakeholders as well, tester too, right? To think about beyond dashboard that we generally have all the dashboards in the QA tool, right? And they start discussing the assumptions, trade-off, and customer impact more. Second, create a time for exploration. I think not just execution. Okay, many teams spend all their time in executing predefined checks or maybe automation too. But those checks are obviously important. But they are only verified what you already expect, right? Reserve some hours, maybe an hour each sprint, maybe if you can, maybe every day, or at least in each sprint, few hours to explore, for the exploratory testing, and encourage tester to investigate the unusual scenarios, challenge the assumptions, follow unexpected behaviors, that kind of things. And the third could be uh, involve the testers in the early conversation, and that is very important. So testing, shouldn't begin with the development after the development finished. the earlier tester participation is very important, and the more participate in the discussion about requirement architecture as well. Many of testers I experienced is that they just follow the requirement, but I think the most important part is before any new requirements, understand the architecture, the backend, how everything is connected, how the dashboard is connected, how the product, the front end, the back end, the database, everything, how it is connected, how it is impacting each other. If you know the architecture, it will help you to design more complex scenarios. It will help you to identify the risk, and then go ahead, involve tester in those kind of discussion as well. I think I hope I answered your questions.
Okay, I hope that question was answered. Okay, so there's one more question. Many engineering teams have extensive automated checks, high code coverage, and green CI/CD pipelines. What are some practical signs that they may still be missing important risks?
Let me read again.
You want me to read that again?
Yeah.
Okay. So many engineering teams have extensive automated checks and high code coverage and green CI/CD pipelines. So what are some practical signs that they may still be missing important risks?
So I think this is a very important question, but I think my answer would be let me explain. So testing is investigation. And investigation doesn't stop at the so no, just a second. So yeah, so if they are just talking about the numbers, as I said in the slides as well, if they are only talking about the coverage, right, and they don't care about, they don't discuss about the uncertainty, what if, what could go wrong, all right. The examples that I said, right, the teams with the CrowdStrike has all the high level code coverage, green CI/CD pipeline, but they still fail. Why? The reason is that the questions, the assumptions, they only follow the number, they only follow the tools, and they believe that everything green is fine. But I don't think everything green is fine. You have to start question. There should be the reverse question. And when you begin the reverse question, if there is no reverse question like that, and they're only talking about the numbers, then that is the practical sign. I think you have to start that question. But why? Let's say there is a 90% green. So what does it mean? Does it mean it's everything fine? How do you know that? That is the question. I think if those kind of discussion is not there, then that is one of the signs. They are missing the important risk. I hope I answered the question. If not, then
Thank you, Deepak.
That's fine.
Okay, I think meanwhile, can we all please scan the QR code and provide the feedback? Sagar, you have any questions to Deepak?
No. I see there is one more question from Vishal. So testing is investigation. So the tester can go beyond the specification. Will that be accepted? Yeah. So the
yes.
simple
So
answer
yes,
is yes.
yes, exactly. You have to go the beyond specification. Okay.
So we should not
Expect
limit the testing only to
exactly.
the
Yeah.
specification.
Don't trust blindly the specification. Okay. There could be a bug in the specification itself. So the conversation is very important. You
Yeah.
have to go beyond the specification. You ask questions. Don't forget to, you know, just follow and believe that is your the final, the oracle that you should follow. Ask about question about the oracles as well. That is the specific as well.
Right.